All right, guys, we are back. Second episode of the Predliner webcast, spot where we talk Nashville Predators hockey on Predlines.com with Fansided. I'm here with two of my staff riders. Here's Cutler Clown. What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
And Daniel Lavender all the way up in Milwaukee.
How's it going?
So some stuff going on today. We've got a little Predators hockey action today. Preseason game tonight, I believe 7:30 Eastern against Tampa Bay, down in Tampa Bay. It's on the road. So yeah, we got that to look forward to. They tweeted out the line combinations for tonight's game. Let me get that up. First line, it looks like this will change throughout the game. I'm sure Laviolette already said, he's going to change it up at training camp this weekend. First line, he has Beck on the left, Roy in the middle, and then Smith on the right, which Smith and Roy saw a lot of action at training camp when I was there together. They've been there, I'm guessing, on the same line the entire camp pretty much. Then you got Forsberg, Wilson, and Fiala on the second line, which could be lights out. Next line is Cullen on the wing of Yarncroc, and on his other wing is Austin Watson, who I'm kind of surprised they didn't throw Watson in the middle because he's a big body guy, and Yarncroc could maybe a little bit better skater. Then you have Salomaki, Sissons, and who's 38, Arvidsson, which that could also be a pretty fun line to watch. A lot of young talent mixed in, and James Neal and Mike Ribeiro did make the trip. They're not in the starting line, but I'm sure they'll get a little bit of ice time. Not risking injury, but getting in game shape, getting some hits under the belt, stuff like that. So, any of y'all excited about any of those lines?
Yeah, well, the one thing I did see in that is that compared to previous years, all four of those lines are, high octane, high powered offensive lines. You don't see, you're not seeing for this game, you're not seeing a Clune Gostad kind of line, Clune Gostad Nystrom like we saw on the fourth line last year, which is more your grit and grind type. So I think this is sort of the embodiment of Laviolette's system that all four lines are going to come at you hard, are going to skate unbelievably fast, and hopefully score some goals.
What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I think that the Salomaki, Sissons, Arvidsson line is going to be something that I could probably see here in Milwaukee, so that's one to watch. I'm a bit sort of answers a question for me of like, what does Nashville now think of Austin Watson? They have him slotted on the wing. The wing is where he finished last year, and that's where he was doing basically his best hockey of the season on the wing. So I think that maybe they are organization-wide now transitioning as a winger rather than a center.
Yeah, at training camp, Daniel asked me before the show started what Austin Watson kind of looked like, and he was kind of, not to say anything, he was kind of a ghost out there. I mean, obviously he's a huge body. He's probably 6'2", 6'3", big body kid. Get up and down the ice, has some good skill and all that. But yeah, he didn't pop or anything like that when the Fialas and the Yarncrocs and the Forsbergs were really popping out there on the ice, really skating, getting around. But yeah, so what we can expect tonight, I mean, you got obviously just preseason hockey starting. You got a lot of change coming to Nashville with Laviolette, and Mike Cutler already touched on. You have a lot of offensive heavy lines already out there the first get-go. I mean, you have every single line. You have guys out there that can and eventually will put the puck in the back of the net, whether it will be in Nashville or Milwaukee. I mean, those are some fast-paced looking lines. And then I guess next, do we have any players to kind of expect that might have a good night tonight and maybe throughout camp with the preseason stuff like that? My pick and what I want to see is I want to see Kevin Fiala put on a show. I want him to be, lights in, lights out every single night, which I think he's going to be. Like at the rookie tournament, he was asked, how about the style of play over here compared to back home, and he said, I was surprised. I was nervous. He said he was nervous. He said it's a lot more physical. He said it was a lot more physical than he even expected. But it looked like even at camp, when you're not laying the wood on people, but you're physical and stuff like that. And he looked like he was really getting the hang of that kind of system, getting some chemistry with some guys, and just getting comfortable with his own skin. That's what it's all about. I mean, the guy's still 18, 19 years old, so he's still got plenty of growing to do. But I mean, if he can have a crazy good camp, you never know. He could be like Craig Smith and make the team right out of camp. But that's my guy. What about you, Cutler?
I'm looking towards Mika Salomaki to have a really good camp this week, or over the next couple weeks, and a good preseason because, well, he's got a year of North American hockey under his belt. He spent all of last season at the AHL. He put up phenomenal numbers. He seems to be making the transition. This will be the first time we see him with the big boys since, well, last preseason. But I'm looking to think with more North American experience under his belt, like you said, the transition is kind of tough. You have a little bit of a smaller ice, a little bit more hitting, probably a little bit faster too. So I think Salomaki could definitely step up because he was a name last year, when a lot of young guys were rotating onto the Nashville roster. He was a guy that didn't see much of that time, and I think that's just because he was less experienced as a North American hockey player. So I think he's a long shot to make it out of camp just because of the high volume of forwards, but I would see him on the Nashville roster, quarter of the way, midway through the season, at least for a few games.
Yeah, I see him making an appearance for sure. He looks good, at camp as well. He led Milwaukee in scoring, did he not, Daniel?
Yeah, he did, and he's a guy that the coaching staff in Milwaukee last year, he was first year in North America. It never looked like he was really having to learn much. He fit the system so well, and he was so physical for not being necessarily one of the bigger guys. I always say this, he got under so many people's skin. I would have loved to see what it'd be like if he really spoke solid English to really tick people off, because he would get under people's skin so easily, just the way that he would aggressively forecheck. So it'd be great to see him have a good camp. Taylor Beck is another guy who's in there right now, unsigned, restricted free agent, who's kind of in on sort of a tryout kind of a basis, looking for a deal, who personally I'd just like to see him actually earn that sort of contract. I don't think he would get an NHL spot, though, but he's a guy who has probably more to prove there than anybody. Like you were saying, I'd love to see Kevin Fiala really tear it up as well. I'd like to see him actually at his age sort of crack the NHL roster, because it's been, I mean, how long has it been since Nashville's had a player that exciting where he's a forward, he gets on the puck, and you kind of get on the edge of your seat. He has that ability. It's just the difference between, say, a guy of his age versus a guy like Seth Jones last year. I don't know if he has the maturity, and I don't know if that's the sort of thing where maybe he ends up going to Europe for a year to kind of just solidify some other things around just that crazy, those crazy hands that he has.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's going to end up working himself into the NHL yet, but he's going to go a long way to proving that in this preseason.
Yeah, and with like what you said about Fiala, maybe making an NHL roster, going back home. He said last week after the rookie tournament games that if he does not make the team, he would go back home. He just said, I can continue to develop back there. Why? He basically said, I'll just go back home. I'll develop there, mature a little bit more. Then hopefully next year he'll be, best case scenario, obviously on Nashville. If not, getting some time with Nashville and majority of time in Milwaukee. But yeah, Kevin Fiala was my guy. He looked great at camp. I was at camp Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I saw a lot of good stuff. Got to see all the new guys. The biggest standout of the entire week was Olli Jokinen's hair. It is unbelievably fantastic. Probably it's the best hair in hockey. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, here's the other question: is it better than Lane Lambert's? Can it beat the Lambert flow?
Yes, it's better.
Wow.
It's better. It's long, man. I'm telling you. Who was there? Somebody saw him at informals, or I guess it was at when he got signed. He kind of had the flow going, just a regular length flow, but you can tell he probably hadn't got it cut for 3-4 months since he's been signed, 2-3 months. So yeah, his hair was good. But yeah, overall camp was awesome. Laviolette is running the guys ragged. He spoke to the media and said, I like my fit teams, and Chris Martell at the Predliner asked me, do you have the most fit team every year going into the season? He goes, I'd like to, basically, but other coaches kind of do the same thing. But even the guys that were at camp last year said, it's a lot more fast paced. The system's different. They're liking the transition into the system. So, I mean, that's a good sign. I mean, guys had smiles on their faces in the locker room. They were excited. Even after the scrimmage, you had the mix of the young guys, the young prospects out there with, the Eric Nystroms, the Borks, the Yarncrocks, guys like that. And all of them were really excited. I mean, even Beck, he's been through it a couple times, and he scored in the second period. That that always looks good on a resume, especially when you're on a tryout basis kind of deal. Which he's not technically on a tryout basis, but basically he is. But other than that, Diaby was physical. He threw Pendens into the corner boards, and him and Rich Clune exchanged some words. It was pretty wild to see. You weren't expecting anything like that, but of course, Clune, he's going to stick up for his teammates, even if it's in scrimmage, even if it's the guy that he's like Pendenza, who he's never really played with. But yeah, I mean, it was good. Laviolette, he seems really excited. Really, he was out there, each training session on the ice. Say a guy messed up, he would correct it. They'd redo it. You saw a lot of zone breakouts to warm up, basically, and then a lot of end zone play. The day of the scrimmage, the guys scrimmaged, and then the guys that didn't were like the Weber, the Yossies, the Jones, the superstars on the team. They worked on the power play situations, penalty kill situations, just like that, and they look good. Mike Ribeiro has crazy hands. James Nealshot is obviously stupid good. But yeah, I mean it's exciting. I think the whole organization is super excited. It was just a really good environment. And then Poyle, GM David Poyle addressed the media Saturday, and the first question was, "What's going on with Ryan Ellis?" And he said, basically nothing. I mean, it's a difference in money. There's nothing really new to report since the last time he reported, which was probably 3 weeks ago to Josh Cooper at the Tennessean, and there's just nothing. It's just a difference in dollars. But he did say we want him here and we're not going to trade him, which kind of surprised me that he said we're not going to trade him. But
well, I'm kind of glad to see that he's talking like that about Ryan Ellis, because you can see what's going on over in Columbus with the Ryan Johansson situation. Last week, it got ugly really, really fast as training camp got underway. The Blue Jackets management is basically saying that Johansson and his agent Kurt Overhart are just being absolutely ridiculous, that they're asking for way too much money, and even like fellow NHL agents chimed in saying like, "Come on, what are you like? This is an absurd amount of money." So just glad to see that it's not a sort of bad blood kind of deal quite yet, or hopefully it doesn't even develop into that at all.
Yeah, and somebody asked Poyle, with the stuff getting out about Johansson, kind of leaking out there between his agent and the money and all that stuff, with the contract offers. He said, somebody asked, you really don't want it to get to that point. And he said, well, honestly, it can get to that point if the people want to leak the information, but they obviously don't want it to get to that point with the relationship. I mean, it doesn't look good for an organization. I mean, Ryan Johansson, who had a good year last year, he's asking for more money than he should deserve. But I mean, you don't want that stuff leaking out to the media. I mean, media today, it leaks in 10 seconds. I mean, but yeah, I don't think Poyle, he's not going to let that happen. Obviously, if he gets re-signed, he might go over some situations that went on and stuff like that, but I don't think it's ever going to get to Johansson's.
Yeah, David Poyle doesn't seem like the vengeful type, really. I mean, you saw, I mean, he sort of called out Ryan Suter a little bit after he left in 2012, saying, he lied to us and everything like that. But other than that, he never got as bad as what Johansson's situation turned into last week.
Yeah. And then, we also asked him about Beck, who we kind of touched on here, that he's basically, just showing off his skills. He's just doing whatever, he's trying to show off in front of the GM, in front of the coaches, see if he fits into the system, which I think he does. I think he's a good hockey player. I mean, he's played well in Milwaukee. He's gotten a little time with the big club. I mean, he's a good player. I don't think it's necessarily a thing of dollars or anything like that. But with that being said, I don't know. Nobody really knows, what that situation is. If he goes out and scores a goal a night in the preseason games, yeah, he might get a contract. But I don't know if he can do enough to say, hey, I need this contract, I need this kind of money, or else I'm going to go this way. I don't think he's in that situation or that kind of player to do that. And I don't really necessarily think he's worked his way out of a contract either. Like in camp, if he goes a couple days without a goal, I don't know if you can say, oh, well, he doesn't fit the system. He's not putting up, numbers or anything. It's a tough situation. I'm sure it's super stressful on him, waking up every single day. You're like, oh, well, I could be cut tomorrow. Because, I mean, they've already made their cuts. They sent some guys to juniors, stuff like that. I mean, it could be bad, but for Beck, or it could be good. You never know what could happen. But Daniel got this gets to see him, play a little bit more up in Milwaukee. Do you think he gets re-signed? I mean, what's your gut feeling telling you?
I think that he does, and I really like that his mindset was, I don't care if the deal's in place or not, I want to come to camp and work and actually just show the coaching staff that I'm here to work. And on top of that, if he does or doesn't get signed, he's in that camp learning things from a new coaching staff and everything, and a lot of players who are there. He experienced for his age. A lot of those players who are up there know him, especially in the NHL because he's played a fair amount of games there. The opportunities for him to play weren't so much there, and it's something that even David Poile kind of said is like maybe he's right that he hasn't necessarily had the chances, especially last year when he was really, I think, Milwaukee's most consistent player. I do think, though, that it's sort of an argument of what's Taylor Beck want? Does he want a one-way deal only, or does he want the two-way? Does he think he's an NHL player? Does he mind or have a problem with being in the American Hockey League, kind of being that guy who is the first person you phone up if there's an injury and say, we need him now, send him to us or whatever. So if I'm him, I actually don't take that as a negative. I don't think the roster spaces are there for even some of the best of players that we had all in Milwaukee last year, like Sissons or Salamaki. I don't know if the roster spaces are even there for them or back. So it's just a matter of you want a deal signed. If I were him, I'd kind of be kind of nudging for the two-way contract.
Yeah.
So you can be that person who is available and actually earns a place in the NHL if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, in my view, it's almost like, I brought this up last week. There's too many forwards and too few spots, and not enough time. I think that in a way that the Predators, even if they lost Taylor Beck, their pipeline of forwards is still top notch when compared to some of the other teams in the NHL, and it's still unbelievably talented. I think it's almost at some point something's got to give, and players like Beck, maybe Watson, but it's just like there's too many forwards to fit into the space, and I think eventually you kind of have to say to yourself, can they let this player go? Like, what will happen if this player gets let go?
And Daniel touched on could Beck resign and be that first guy they call up with injury, but if you're Poile, could you use that as a selling point? I mean, if you look at the guys that are behind him, you look at Sisson, you look at Salamaki, you look at Arvidsson, you look at Fiala if he stays in North America. I mean, if you say, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars, and basically you're the one guy, like say Cullen goes down with an injury, like I'm calling you up, you're coming to Nashville. I mean, could you use that as a selling point? And do you wait until you? I mean, obviously they're going to wait until they feel comfortable about it, but I'm guessing they're just waiting to see, does Laviolette, does he make Forsberg, or does he make Sissons, or does he make both, immediate roster spots on the big club? And if that's the case, Beck has a decision to make to where should he be the number one AHL guy in Milwaukee, which he would be alongside Salamaki. But do you use that as a selling point? Do you think you could?
I'm not sure. I think an interesting point that we're probably going to see as he actually gets some game times here is what does Laviolette actually think? Because I think his input could be a really big thing. I mean, this is really his first chance getting to see a guy like Taylor Beck in the system. So does he work to Laviolette's system? I'm sure that a guy like Dean Evison will have a lot of input on what he saw from Beck last year, and I'm sure that there's a lot of positives because the big thing that I remember having a conversation with Evison about was there was plenty of times when Beck could have been really down on himself, kicking himself for not getting the NHL time, but he never did, and he just kept working. So you're seeing a bit of that even here when he doesn't have any sort of contract in place, but he's there to work. I think that that's something an organization would really like.
Yeah.
It's just I still think it comes down to what does actually Laviolette think about his system and how does he fit to it. Scored a goal, so I mean that's something that can back that up. But I think you're going to see probably more along the lines tonight how that can work long term, and it'd be weird to see him get cut sometime very quickly into this preseason. You'd have to almost have like an awful night tonight for something like that to kind of slap that home. So I think that you're going to see him be in the mix for a long time in this preseason because they're probably going to be giving him a very serious look.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. What about you, Color? Do you think, I mean, you could use that as a selling point, being the #1 AHL guy?
Well, yeah, like Jose was saying, it depends on what Laviolette wants, but it also depends on what Taylor Beck wants. I mean, is he looking to be a guy that is he looking to be a guy that will consistently play on the third and fourth line in the NHL, which I think is sort of his future, for, at least for the next few years, or does he not mind being the AHL top call-up guy? And I think on certain other teams in the league, he could end up as a bottom six forward in the NHL. But it all just depends on what he wants. If he's comfortable being in that position, then so be it. I think David Poile has to sort of play his cards right and know, okay, just does he want NHL roster spot? And if he does want a guaranteed NHL roster spot, then I don't think that Nashville would provide that for him.
Yeah.
I don't see that roster spot being there for him in the first place, which is why I think the talking point really comes down to if he wants a one-way deal. Well, that's just not feasible. So he's in there to try and kind of prove it, which, I mean, more power to him. I think if that's the case, he's sort of in a losing battle to begin with. But I think a two-way deal is certainly possible. And at his age, I think he's 23, 24. I think he's 23. He's still young enough where it's great to have a guy like that in your organization, someone who's a bit more seasoned, someone who is going to not make some of those kind of boneheaded mistakes if you call them up, and have him playing those third or fourth line minutes. And that's really what you kind of look for in a player. So I think that you sort of have to almost get that across to Taylor Beck if he really is just in the NHL mindset, that being in the AHL and being that guy who's going to come up and prove a point that you belong in the NHL over, say, whoever would get injured. That's not a bad alternative.
Yeah, and with what you're saying, kind of the veteran 23-year-old in the locker room and in the system, he played a really good scrimmage. Even after the scrimmage, I went to the locker room and we talked to Nystrom, and Beck was walking out, and Nystrom was walking out behind him, kind of deal. He said, way to paddle out there, kid. I mean, that was the play of the game. He had a big hit, had a check. A back check hit, and then he went on and scored a goal, and he said that was the play of the game. That's what Nystrom said, off record, of course, but it was, it seems like guys kind of are rooting for him. They want that guy to be like, hey, I'm here to try out. I'm giving him my all. Which every guy in there, especially the Nystroms, the Klunes, stuff like that, they've been through it. I mean, they've had to work their way up through the NHL. They spent some time in the AHL. Spent some rough time in junior, stuff like that, where they like seeing the process. And I think Beck is right in the middle of that process, and maybe some guys in the locker room are cheering for him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. Well, going back to Ryan Ellis, I think that one question we need to examine is sort of when can we start, panicking over whether or not he's going to get re-signed. And I say the answer to that is really sort of never. I think that I think that Poile in this situation has the leverage to wait him out, to sort of say, okay, you want more money, okay, we're just gonna start the regular season without you, have fun sitting on your couch and not doing anything, and then once Ellis realizes that, and then maybe people will say, okay, I've got to lower my expectations here and maybe try to get a deal done. I know I believe that he may have other offers elsewhere, and certainly other teams would offer him deals, but I think that he really wants to stay in Nashville, and I think that once he realizes that Poile has the leverage, that's when the deal will start to get done. But I don't think hitting the panic button will happen really ever.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing Poile has in his pocket is depth. Ryan Ellis has in his pocket that he's Ryan Ellis, and that doesn't mean as much as I think it means. At least not yet.
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of. I think Ellis is just hurting his stock. I mean, he had one full season with the Preds. He put up good numbers. He's obviously a good power play guy, but it's just. I don't think the panic button's anywhere close, or panic mode's anywhere close to right now. But the panic mode probably needs to set into Ryan Ellis pretty soon.
Yeah.
I mean,
is it getting to the point, by the way, where the longer this process holds up, the more you feel like you don't really even need a Ryan Ellis?
Yeah, exactly. And with that being said, you look at the depth of Nashville, like everybody, like you both said, you have a lot of guys. I mean, you have Victor Bartley, who can slide into his role whenever he wants. I mean, defensively at least, maybe not offensively, but defensively he can play with Ryan Ellis any given night. And somebody asked Bartley, do you feel any pressure, any extra pressure, in camp, especially the start of camp with Ryan Ellis there, out, you basically, filling his role if he doesn't re-sign with the team. He said, no, I'm just here doing my job. It's all business. I'm here just focused, trying to get better, get into better shape. But he looks like he's in great shape. I mean, he was, skating around the ice, playing with everybody, looking good out on the ice. But yeah, I mean, I think panic mode for him is Bartley has no panic mode because he's there. I mean, he's going to slide in, and Diaby looked pretty poised as well. I think if Ellis doesn't re-sign, maybe a defenseman goes down, I think Diaby or maybe even Noonan is the guy you call up for the Preds. Maybe Piskula, but I mean he's gotten a little, he's aged a little bit. I guess you could say he's the older vet of the Admirals.
Yeah. Well, what about Matthias Ekholm? Is he, or I thought he might have been. He could easily slide into that role on the third line with Victor Bartley too. I mean, I in my view, I think sort of Diaby and Ekholm might sort of switch off at that position, sort of rotate a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ekholm obviously he has the experience edge over Diaby, and he seemed poised as well. People asked, does your game change at all? Which we asked that to basically everybody about with the new system. So no, I think my game is offensive enough, and I'm just out there, playing my game, doing what the coach is telling me, stuff like that. Which I think Ekholm's a good player. He's a big body. He can play alongside Jones as he did a lot last year, or he can play alongside Bartley or Ellis, like you said, if Ellis resigns. Or heck, it'd be scary. But if you put Diaby and Ekholm together, that's two defensemen over 6'3" right there. So especially in a bottom pairing role, that's
wow.
scary to think about. But yeah, I don't know. It's very quiet. The Ellis situation is super quiet. It's not anywhere like Johansson, which Ellis is the Johansson type player, but it is super quiet out there about Ellis. Which I think Poile's playing it perfectly. He doesn't have to be loud about it. He can keep everything in his pockets because Ellis doesn't have anything in his pockets. But yeah, next topic. We've got alternate captains, which we just posted an article a couple hours ago about that. Cutler, who are your two picks for alternate captains next year?
Well, first off, Roman Josi, who is he's obviously the first-line defenseman alongside Shea Weber. He has a little bit more experience under his belt, and I think he knows a lot of the guys in the locker room, and I think especially for the younger defensemen coming in, you have Shea Weber as a captain, but Josi as an alternate would just add to the sort of defensive leadership and bringing in some of those other guys. And I think my surprise pick to get big up alternate captain, Craig Smith, because he's going to start playing more consistent top line minutes, and I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he'll sort of step up this year and step into that leadership role at least for the first part of the season until Mike Fisher returns.
Yeah. How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it's all comes down to experience and the people who have been around the game for a while. And I think you go with Matt Cullen. He played a good amount of games last year. He's someone who's actually already been an alternate captain in his time with Minnesota. I think he's someone who really does kind of command respect, as does my other pick, which would be Olli Jokinen, who I think is going to be a pretty important player for Nashville this season. I think that your best way to actually kind of stamp that is by giving him that letter. He's deserved it like time and time again from his days in Florida. He was a captain. Winnipeg, he was an alternate captain. He's very durable as well. So if you're looking for someone to just kind of carry an A for a little bit, I think you go with one of those two guys because both of them, they are guys who know the game. Olli Jokinen is going to know that locker room, I think, pretty quickly. Matt Cullen already does, and I think that both of them should be guys who you give an A to.
Yeah. I agree with you on Cullen. I think Cullen, he wore the A last year, actually, when Hornqvist was out with an injury. I think it was 1 or 2 games, but, they handed it to him, which that's a whole different coaching staff. But I think Cullen, yeah, he's got the experience. He's got the history with the A on the sweater. He's all into the system. I think he's that veteran leader that the Preds maybe need. They have the mix of young and old. They got Shea Weber, he's not necessarily a veteran yet, still under 30 years old. But yeah, I think Cullen is kind of a safe bet. especially to fill the void until Fisher gets back. I think when Fisher gets back, if he gets back, I mean, Lord knows what's going to happen with that. If he heals, if he plays, if he retires after the season, you never know what's going to happen. That's a whole different day. But my next pick was to get the A for the season was Eric Nystrom, who, yeah, he's not getting top 6 minutes by any means. So, I think he'll be on the third checking line, that kind of deal. But you saw what he could do last year. He had that four goal game, and he's that kind of guy that really moves around the ice. Lays his body on the line. He's kind of everything you want in a hockey player. Maybe if he could get a little bit better hands, maybe night in and night out. But he's that kind of guy that in the locker room as well. He's a really big presence in the locker room. Super nice dude. Tells it how it is. He's all into the system. He's all into Nashville Predators. And I think he'd be a really good pick to be alternate captain.
Well, the one problem I have with Nystrom is that by all estimates of what the Predators line combination is going to be like come opening night, he's the kind of guy that might rotate out of the bottom six and be a healthy scratch occasionally. If they want a little more grit, they'll throw in Rich Clune. So would you be okay with an alternate captain that that's not going to consistently even dress?
Yeah, I don't know if I see Nystrom being the guy flip-flopped out. I think Nystrom is. And Laviolette was asked. I think Robbie Stanley asked him. How does Nystrom kind of fit in your role? And he goes, he's good. He's a hard worker. He's got some offensive talent. He goes out there and does all the things that you ask him to do. I mean, he's a really good player, and he spoke on leadership and stuff like that. And the guys know in the locker room, hey, the leadership role is kind of there for the taking. You have a lot of new faces. You got some veteran guys. You got some younger guys, and stepping in and taking it is just all about your performance on the ice and how you act around the locker room, stuff like that. And I think Nystrom could easily be that guy that some of the younger guys and maybe even some of the older guys just kind of turn to be comfortable around on the ice and off the ice. And I think Nystrom's the dude. But yeah, the guy that I think would kind of roll out of the system would be Clune, and I think Cullen might be the guy that rolls out of the system. He's the vet. He's 37 years old. He might not get over 70 games this year. I don't think Clune will play in 70 games this year either, but we'll see all about that. But what about your picks who absolutely will not get the alternate captain? Not take Fisher's spot, but be the alternate captain. I mean, James Neal, Ribeiro, anybody like that?
Yeah, well, I think Neal is definitely not going to get the captaincy, just simply because, well, I mean, he's a very skilled player and he has a really great veteran presence, but he's not exactly, he's sort of new on the team, and he's not going to be that guy that that is going to be looked to as a leadership on a leadership role. So I think that he'll be more of the offensive firepower, but I don't think he'll quite be a captain role. I think for the most part, the new guys are not going to get those roles. Besides, of course, Olli Jokinen might step up there, and to some extent, Derek Roy or Mike Ribeiro might. But I think for the most part, the new guys are going to be more just there to provide the spark and not necessarily the leadership quite yet.
How about you, Daniel?
Say who's not going to get the alternate captain? Carter Hutton? There we go. I've won that one.
Carter Hutton.
As great as he is, like on the bench talking with commentators during games, I mean, but no. I think that James Neal probably wouldn't be a guy you'd get it. He didn't. I don't think he ever really wore an alternate captain's patch when he was with the Penguins.
No.
And he's not necessarily one of those guys who. Not that I'm taking a crack at his like leadership skills or whatever, but he's not one of those guys who you expect to like command attention, and he's sort of one. He's a winger. He's kind of one of those guys who knows what his role on the ice is to score goals. He's not necessarily a guy who's going to tell you about systems or anything like that, and really kind of slap the game in your face when the game is on the line. So certain guys who were brought in, I don't know if Ribeiro would be a guy who gets it either.
Yeah.
Be interested to see your thoughts if like a Colin Wilson is in that discussion. He gets enough stick as it is. I don't think that he gets it. Tonight he's going to be playing supposedly on a line with Philip Forsberg and Kevin Fiala around him, so how could that possibly go wrong? I don't know. There's a lot of guys who probably won't get it.
Well, the funny thing is, James Neal is actually leading our poll currently on our website as the who would get it alternate captain, which is, I mean, James Neal is fantastic. He's going to be a fantastic player, but come on, we're in the A like right off the bat. It's just not. That's not going to happen.
Being captain isn't a popularity contest.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Alexander Ovechkin.
Yeah.
So it's all about actual guys who I think, and this is another Laviolette thing, guys who resonate most with him. I think that's a thing that really defines, I think, a captain. You want your captains kind of parallel your own kind of ideals on the ice. So Shea Weber's a captain, and I think that he would be a guy anyone would want as a captain. He kind of sums up what a captain is, leads by example, commands respect to the players. Who are the other guys who kind of parallel that and then kind of resonate with Laviolette? And I do feel like it would be the veteran guys, at least for now. It kind of makes it easier on a guy like Laviolette this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talking to Shea Weber, just a little side note. How about him keeping out the news of him and his wife having a baby for like I guess 9 months? I'm guessing, and then the news reporters supposedly asked him, hey, have you been getting your rest? You got the season coming up, and he gave them all one-word answers. He said yes, and then somebody asked, are you on diaper duty, stuff like that, and he said yes. Like,
but I mean that's so typical Shea Weber. I mean he's sort of the quiet guy. He's leading by example, and he's not really very typical of it. Saw his ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. It was very stoic, very monotone, and it was just very very typical Weber. You expect that a lot out of Weber, giving quick answers to the media and keeping news of a child out of public the entire summer.
And going back to James Neal not getting the captain, he's kind of like interview-wise and kind of this persona in the locker room, which I know he's the new guy. He's kind of like Shea, as far as I can tell. He leads by example. I mean, he's the scorer. I mean, he's the scorer on the team, and he knows that he has that label, and he knows he has that label. And he's there to lead by example, and he's short. He's not short with the media, but it's not cracking smiles like Pekka and Nystrom do, and Rich Clune and stuff like that. It's business.
And there's a great, I think it was that NHL 36 series that they had, and they had a James Neal version. And when he was on the Penguins, everyone just referred to him as that little brother that you get to pick on and beat up.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see that. Seeing him in the locker room. I mean, he's a great guy, but he's just straight to the point. He's not gonna cut up, joke around. Which is a good thing. I mean, you have to have a mix of that and the guys that are out there. The Nystroms, the Clunes that are out there. Busting their tail, but I in the locker room, cutting up, stuff like that. Which they don't do a lot of that, but. I mean, you can see a difference between Rich Clune and Eric Nystrom and James Neal and Shea Weber and stuff like that. But I guess the guy that I don't think will get alternate captain, I think I'd go with either Craig Smith. I just don't think he's ready for it leadership-wise. Colin Wilson, obviously. Somebody on Twitter said that they should give it to Seth Jones, which I don't even think should even be a thought. I mean, he can't even buy a beer yet. Which I think that's an unwritten rule. I mean, you can't be a alternate captain on an NHL team until you're at least 24-ish or something. I don't know, but I don't think Craig Smith or Colin Wilson gets it. And then, you have anything to say, Cutler?
Well, shall we dip into the Twitter mailbag here? We have Adam Wenzel asking us. This is an interesting question. I think it's going to be kind of tough to answer. Who scores the first Preds goal of the regular season? Who's going to be the first one to score the first goal of the Peter Laviolette era?
Daniel, you can go first with this one.
I am going to go with Craig Smith. I think that he had such a good season last year, and I actually expect him to kind of pick that pace right back up.
How about you, Cutler?
I'm going to go with Derek Roy for this one. I think the new guy comes in and scores. I'd say the second line gets it done first for in that first game against Ottawa coming up. What about you, Mark?
I'm going to go, not really off the wall, but kind of surprising pick. I'm going to go with Colin Wilson. He's going to score the first goal, but then he's going to get into that.
And then he's not going to score another goal for another 30 games.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Like, people could be so high on him and after scoring a goal, and then he goes 2 months without scoring a goal. But you never know. I mean, get his confidence up, especially with Laddy-less system. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Maybe my dark horse pick would be like a shorthanded goal from Nystrom or Clune or something. You know,
Yeah, that's shorthand. That's very bold. Rich Clune scored a couple of good ones last year. The one against the Rangers on Henrik Lundqvist, that was pretty nice, especially in my, the hometown folks over here.
Oh yeah. Well, that's about it for us at the Predliner.
Yeah.
Been a good show. Always enjoy having y'all. Be sure you follow us on Twitter at PredlinesNSH. Be sure to check Predlines.com for all your up-to-date news, analysis, everything. Bold opinions, of course. We like our bold opinions. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. We will catch back up with y'all next week.